late already. Okay, Tana. The Gemara that we're up to is Tana Yavish Puzzle. It's on page 31a, and the let's see, the 31a, must be about 20 lines up from the bottom. And previous Gemara pretty much went over already. The conclusion of the previous Gemara was all about dealing with the issue of Sukkah Gzula, different cases which we discussed. Is that called a Sukkah Gzula? What is called the Sukkah Gzula? And then we talked about the Takanas Hashavin, which is this takana that the Chachamim made. They made a decree that to make it easier for people to do tshuva, to repent if they stole, was that they should be able to give back even just the value. It's interesting that there was such a need for such a decree. Like it was so common for Jews to steal. It seems like surprising that the rabbis made such a decree, but that's what we see. We see they made such a decree. I don't know. Maybe there's more to it, but like today's day and age, you normally don't think that there's a need for for a decree amongst Jewish people about stealing. We have, there are issues, that we have, like maybe people aren't sneas enough. Or people, there are definitely challenges that we have. But I don't know about stealing, that they would make a whole decree. It definitely seems interesting that they made such a decree for Takonas Hashavim. People should be able to do tshuva about stealing. But anyway, that's the decree that we learned about, and the Chacham and the halachic ramification of that decree is that comes out that it's often that a sukkah, even if it's stolen, it'll still be kosher, because it's not really called stolen. It's really you owe money, because the item is not really a stolen item. It's a different item. I did look into. We had a question. Actually, Ezra asked a question last on Friday. And the question was that we had learned earlier on page 30b about Yiosh and Shina Rishus, that we spoke about Yiosh, Karke Nexeles, and people cutting down the lulav. They have to be careful who cuts it, because really there's if it's stolen, then it's a problem. But if the property is stolen, it's a problem. But once you cut it down, it could still be a problem, because that's only Yiosh. You only have giving up hope. That's what the Gemara in 30b was talking about. But if you change owners, then it's not a problem. So therefore, have someone else cut it and then give it to you, and then or sell to you, and then it's not a problem. That was the Gemara before. And here, the Gemara seems to say that that even without Yiosh, there seems to be a concept where you own it, because this lady was complaining about it, meaning she wanted it back. So you have a case here, the story of this woman who complained about the Exilarch sukkah was not kosher. And the reason it's not kosher is because it's stolen, because there's some wood that's stolen in it, or all of the wood is stolen, or some of the wood. But basically, they or the wood for the schach is stolen, and the conclusion was that she has no claim, only value. So the story seems to be a case where she did not give up hope. She's expecting to get her wood back, and nevertheless, we seem to think that the Gemara seems to give pretty clear halachic ruling. Rav Nachman says it's not a problem. The item is ours. It's we owe you money. All you have is a claim for money. The item is ours. So the question is, don't we need to have a Yiosh? Don't we need to have normally the original owner has to give up hope, and then you have like a Shino Rishos, a Shino Shem, a Shino Maisa. So the thing is, if you look in Shulchan in the Rambam, the Rambam talks in Hilchos Geneva and in Hilchos Gzela V'Aveda, both laws of the theft and the laws of burglary. Both of them deal with the case where someone stole something. And if you do change the item, if the item is changed, you don't need Yush. It becomes yours, which which we sort of see here. If the case is talking about that the item was changed, meaning it's not just part of the wood, but somehow there's been a change done to it. So that would not be a problem. That would not be so the fact that there's no Yush is not a problem. The other question is with Shinoi Hashem. With Shinoi Hashem, how could how would it work? Would seem Shinoi Hashem, you would need Yush. In other words, if a person stole something and he destroyed it, he made a change in it, so it's not the same item. It makes sense that you don't need Yush. That's not the item. You're going to owe back that item. You owe back the value of the item that you stole. That makes sense. But what about Shinoi Hashem? So it's a changed name. Yeah, there's a concept that it's a different item, but it's not physically different. It's just that it has a new name to it. But there seems to be a machlokes rishonim. So this seems to be a little source that now it's called schach. It's not called a branch. So it's a Shinoi Hashem. And here, yet the Rav Nachman said it's not a problem. All she gets is the Mei Eitzim. So here, seemingly, this might be a little proof to that. The Rishonim that hold that, like the Ramban holds that you change the name, you don't need a Yush. Just Shinoi Hashem is good enough. The change of the name, as it used to be called this branch, now it's called schach. That would be good enough for the owner to own it. But the thing is that here also we have this rabbinic decree of even if there is no change, then you have takanas marish, and that is that we don't make the person take apart his whole sukkah. And this, we don't make a person take apart his sukkah in order to return because we want to make it easier for the person who stole. So according to that, Takanas Marish also doesn't seem to have anything to do with Yush. I know Takanas Marish was made because the person was not Miyayish. He wants his wood back. And yet the Chachamim say, no, we're not going to make you give back the wood. Instead, we're going to ask you to give back the value. Meaning the Takanas Marish seems to be specifically in a case, especially in a case where there's no Yush, and yet we're gonna tell him to give back. Well, I don't know if you can say especially in a case where there's no Yush, but it seems like it would include cases of no Yush where the person didn't give up hope. He wants his wood back. He would benefit. He would enjoy having his wood back, and yet we say no. That we're doing a favor to the Goslin, to the person who stole it. We're doing a favor to him. Now he doesn't have to give it back. The other guy probably wants it back. That's why we want to. Otherwise, we're doing a favor to the other guy. We're doing a favor to the Goslin that we don't make him have to give back the wood. Well, seemingly, we're dealing with a case where the guy didn't really, or seemingly it includes cases where the guy didn't give up hope. So that Takanas Marish is not dependent on Yush and giving up hope. So that would seem to be the reason why Rav Nachman held that there's no reason why we have to give back, and why no reason why the Rabbanim who are eating in the sukkah are not fulfilling the mitzvah. It's not called the sukkah dula. It's not stolen. This item is not the item that was stolen. We owe money, but the item is ours. Yes, David.
It seems like the woman had he's saying she's a screamer, but she was justified. She's saying to him, "How are you using this my wood?" And he says, "Well, we only owe you the monetary value." If she hadn't come along, he would have been using his stolen stuff it was only that she brought to his attention, that whether it was monetary value or the wood itself. If she hadn't said anything, he would just be sitting there with his stolen wood. And even if there's a way out that the Chachamim made so people can do tshuva easily, I'm thinking she's saying that that's good for robbers that want to do tshuva, but this is like you're on a higher level. The rabbanim are supposed to be on a higher level. They're not supposed to be depending on such a heter.
So yeah, you got a good point. In other words, if the person isn't ready to do tshuva, does he fulfill the mitzvah? So supposedly this is an argument which we mentioned between the commentaries. And as Rashi, they bring in Shulchan Aruch this concept, like the person's not planning on doing tshuva, he's not planning on returning it. But does that mean that they didn't fulfill the mitzvah? So you could say from the fact that Rav Nachman seems to be very relaxed about this whole story, that this itself seems to be a proof that maybe this itself is sort of a proof that even if he's not planning on paying, he's fulfilling the mitzvah. It's not clear again that we don't see the full story here. Did Rav Nachman offer the money? Did he not know about it? Maybe he offered the money and he didn't, and she refused to take it. So you could, however you want to prove, it's not 100% proof. The story is a little vague. We don't know the all the details, because there is room to say that maybe Rav Nachman wanted to pay her and she refused to accept the money, and he told the people, well, she's not following halacha. She's claiming that it's hers, and that's why. So again, your point that she has a valid claim. Yes, the question is how far she's taking that claim. Is she still kvetching about it after Rav Nachman maybe offered her money, or is she, is she just asking once? What is the exact case? So it sounds like she's been kvetching, and it sounds like Rav Nachman might have answered her, or he offered her money, or or she's making a bigger deal out of it than it really is. She's just trying to bother them. It's unclear why Rav Nachman is calling her this woman who's what was the term, Pa'isa hida. She's this kvetch.
Yeah, she's expecting a higher level of behavior from the chachamim, from the rabbanim, than from a regular robber.
Right. The thing is that the chachamim didn't steal it. It's the servant. One of the workers took it and built their sukkah. So they didn't know. So it's not. I mean, again, of course, it's always nice to show not to ignore people. Ignoring people is a type of abuse. But it seems that Rav Nachman might have said something to her and explained to her, mentioned, like, come to us after Sukkot, or something like that, or here's money if you want, or when she didn't seem to accept it. It's a little unclear. Like, was he totally ignoring her? I mean, she claims Rav Nachman Amrlei Itzad Havalei. Right, she was right. I guess if you take the story very literally, she's claiming that he's not he's totally ignoring her. And my father had 318 slaves, and he didn't ignore people, and you're totally ignoring me. And then what does he do? He ignores her again, and he just tells the students, she's a woman who we sort of don't want to have anything to do with, because the halacha is all we owe her is money. So I mentioned on Friday that there is a commentary that says that Rav Nachman didn't want to answer her because he didn't want it to be like she came to him with he didn't want it to be considered that she demanded the money. So he pretended he was like pushing her off, or like ignoring her completely, because otherwise it would be considered that she's demanding it on Sukkot. She can only demand money, but if she waits till afterwards, she'll be able to demand the actual item that she wants. She seems to want that wood for whatever reason. So he pushed her off. So there is such a commentary. So it's not such a simple shot, even that commentary, because the thing is that even after the fact, let's say it's after Sukkot, or let's say he asks for the she wants the wood now. It's on Sukkah, so she's asking for wood. So the halacha is all I have to give her is the money. I could still give her the wood if she want. It's that she can only demand the money, but I could give her the wood because she's demanding it on Sukkot. The halacha is that all she gets is money. But of course, if I tell her, listen, I owe you $20. I took you, four 2x4s, whatever. I owe you $20. Would you like after Sukkot? I could say, listen, you want $20 or do you want the wood? And I could still give her the wood. So it is surprising that Rav Nachman. Well, there are two things surprising. One is that Rav Nachman needed. Why did he care to give her the opportunity that she could demand the wood? She could still get the wood even if she doesn't demand it. Would still give her the wood if she's willing to agree to take wood instead of the money. We could give her the wood. That's one problem. Another problem is that the fact that she came to Rav Nachman demanding it, doesn't that already create a claim? If she's coming, so he's ignoring her. Does his ignoring allow this not to be considered that she demanded it because he ignored her? Oh, so he has to be sitting on his judge chair in order to. Does he have to be sitting down in front of his table with his what's that thing they bang on the table and whatever in order to be considered the gavel? Does he need to have the gavel in his hand in order for it to be considered that she claimed that she has a claim? Like seemingly she came to him, so he's going to ignore her. I mean, the fact is he heard her claim. Isn't that called a claim? So she came with a claim. So it's not so simple to understand this commentary. Again, it is a later. It's not necessarily the pshat here. It's one commentary wants to say that this is the pshat, but it's not such a smooth pshat, not such a smooth interpretation here because the fact is he heard her claim. She did claim, and he's there. Okay, he wasn't sitting down. He's not. I mean, still he doesn't have to be a judge. He has to be he's the person who's receiving the claim. So you have to say that he's not the real owner. He's just the manager, maybe. So her claim to him is not really a claim. But then if that's true, then why didn't he answer her? He doesn't have to ignore her. He could have told her then. In other words, why is he not considered the person to bring the claim to when his ignoring? Why does that have any validity? Why does his ignoring her make it that it's like she didn't claim? So that's a little problematic. So again, if you learn the story on the very simple level, he ignores her, and he tells his students that she's a kvetch, and all she gets is the money. So the question is, why did he act this way to her? Why did he not answer her that? Why didn't he tell her? So it could be that he tells his students this, that in other words, the way I see it is when he says Po'isa Hida, he's telling her she's a kvetch. Could be he's explaining why he ignored her in the first place. Like he's telling his students, it's not really right to ignore people, but this lady is one of those people who you need to ignore because she'll never end. You answer her, she's going to bother you more. She's going to bother you more. So there are certain, so Rav Nachman tells his students, you know why I ignored her? But really the answer is, that to me sounds like more, again, I didn't see this shot that's why he's telling them, but he's explaining to his students that she's the type of person that you can't answer a question. She's the type of person you have to you can only get around it. It's unfortunate because it's not a nice way to deal with people is to ignore them. But she's Pa'isa Hida, and maybe that's what he's explaining to his students why he ignored her in the first place. Well, that seems maybe to be a pshat over here, unless you have other. I don't know if Rabbi Steinsaltz says anything.
No,
have another pshat, but that would be my understanding here. But
he just says that she claimed that she should be treated with deference due to her lineage as a Jew.
Right. Right. But it sounds like she might be that, you could see from the way she's talking, she has that, she's coming, coming off very strong, and she's not gonna quiet down. Some people like that, ignoring is one of the only ways around them.
Maybe she was just looking for some derech eretz.
Well, how about the other thing? Maybe she's just the fact that she's bothered about some wood, which is basically could mean that Rashi learns it's just the schach, right? Is that what we saw in Rashi? That it was what did Rashi over here say? This was just schach. So seemingly the way Rashi learns is just schach, like what in the world is she bothering them for? Schach is like eitzim ba'al. That's like eitzim. This is not a kshura de matalalta that's hard to get. If you remember, the Gemara said eitzim shchiche. You can get wood all over. So
lawn trash.
What?
Lawn trash. That's
lawn
what
trash
schach is.
Right, lawn trash. Exactly. Pseilas of Gair of Yaakov. Yeah, exactly, Isaac. So the fact that she's complaining about this schach, maybe that's why Rashi learns that shot. I know I said earlier that the reason Rashi maybe learns that is it's a continuation of the brisa before was talking about the schach that Gazal ate some sikechwe. And I said also because maybe later on there are if you actually use it as a shura de metalalta, so the Gemara gets involved in this question of
possible uses.
Eitzim and if it's shrichi, if it's not shrichi. Here, they didn't seem to get involved.
All the possible uses of a decent piece of wood.
Of a wood that's hard to come across, right? But here maybe this is why Rashi actually brings that it's talking about that he knew that she's a kvetch because she's bothered about she's complaining about a piece of wood that you could get anywhere, a piece of wood. Any schach, a branch, you need a branch. Come on, okay. The fact that she's complaining and making a whole story about it, that shows that she's a kvetch. Maybe that's maybe that sort of like sheds light on why Rav Nachman ignored her. Might the way Rashi's learning that it's they use this wood for schach. Maybe it sheds light on Rav Nachman. He's ignoring her because she is a little sugar. She's making a whole big deal out of a piece of wood instead of just saying simply, you want to give me back the wood, you want to give me money, you want to go to the store for me. She didn't talk like a man. She's coming to them with a complaint and then making a whole big deal out of
it. I think that what she was saying is that my father, who had 318 servants, was able to control them. You have this one servant, and you can't control him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And maybe he was offended by the fact that she said something like that.
Right.
But I agree with you on one thing, that there should have been a little bit more derech eretz in this situation.
Right. Now the other thing that I will mention is the fact that what is her complaint when she comes? Does she come saying, I want my wood? Or does she come saying, you people are sinning? You people are dwelling in a sukkah gzula. How is she coming to this argument? How is she entering this debate, this complaint? She's coming with a claim, you people, you are she doesn't say what that, come on, give me back, either give me a wood, you stole my wood, give me wood or give me money. She's not saying that. She's saying, you people are sitting in sukkah gzula, you stole my wood. Oh. So that type of a claim in the first place is also disrespectful to the rabbis. Your people sitting in a sukkah gzula, I mean, that sounds to me like quite a an inappropriate behavior to tell rabbanim that they're sitting in a sukkah gzula. You don't say that to a rav. You can tell them that maybe you didn't know. Maybe
you ask them. You
Ask him,
ask him.
where'd
You
you
don't
get?
tell him.
You're gonna paskin for him. He's in a sukkah gzula. You want to paskin? Who does this lady think she is? So if you think about it that way, it's disrespectful on her part, and that would be another reason why Rav Nachman felt it would appropriate to ignore her. So that's it's also
But-
you have to see the whole story.
Rabbi, can't the fact that she says that that they're sitting in a sukkah gzula, it's possible that she knows more than people are giving her credit for.
That's okay. She could, but you know what? In front of a Rav, you don't talk like that. It's a
That I understand. Okay.
It's almost like a Rav gives a psak while you're standing there next to him, and the Rav, someone asks him a shayla, and you tell the Rav, why'd you pastor like that? Who are you? I know you're knowledgeable, but still, you don't. That's not the way to say it. You could say, please, Rav, could you
Like
explain
I
it to
say,
me?
you
Say,
can
well,
ask. You
can
don't
ask.
tell. You ask. Why? How?
The other thing
Why do
too
you
is-
rule this way? Isn't
Right.
it whatever? And you ask.
Could you explain it? I'd like to understand. But to
The other fact is, if in fact it is a claim, as the rabbi, he can't do anything until he actually hears both sides of both sides of the argument. So she's presenting it as if it's her claim and nobody else is presenting the other side. So perhaps the reason why he responds the way that he does is that we can't, it's Sukkot, we can't have a Beit Din in which a decision can be made. So he responds the way that he does, meaning trying to explain it to the students.
right. He doesn't want it to be you're not allowed to make a dinner. But the problem I have is that he still could have told her that. He could tell her, listen, it's Shabbos, it's Yontiv. We can't have a dinner now. We don't, why does he ignore her? But so some of these, this idea that she's a pa'isa, she's complaining about this item, she's saying it in a certain way. Like a few things together make us understand maybe why Rav Nachman acted this way. It could also be that he knew her from before. Some people who they are from previous interactions. So that's another part of the story that might just be left out, that he knows who she is. He's calling her a paisa. Maybe he knew from before, besides all the chutzpah that she has now. So that's gives us an understanding of a little understanding maybe of the story. Okay, so bottom line is, so if we want to just sum up what we've learned, so we have the three types of cases of a sukkah gazula, of a stolen sukkah. There's one case that everyone agrees is kosher, and that is when the gazal eitzim, if a person stole wood and was basachef, even Rabbi Eliezer, everyone agrees that such a sukkah is going to be considered kosher to use, and the reason being because it's it's not considered that you owe the wood that was stolen. It's considered that you owe the value. So everyone would agree in that case.
You've made enough changes in whatever that ultimately you're going to keep it, and you owe her the money.
Correct. Either enough changes or the takanas marish, or you built it in that it's during Sukkot, you're not going to have to return it. Now the Gemara did say that there are exceptions to this rule. One is if they claim it, or if, you're going to pay it after Sukkot, then you got to give back the actual item. Depending on the commentary, some say if you demand it after Sukkot, you got to give back the wood, or if the owner, the original owner, requests it after Sukkot, according to some opinions, that's a reason that you have to give back the wood. But so that would be one thing. And the other thing was chibroi betina, if you attached it with clay or plaster, mud, maybe cement, you attached it to the rest of your sukkah, then even after the sukkahs, you do not have to give back the actual item, you'd give back the money. So that's the case of sukkah gzula, where everyone agrees that it's kosher. You could use it on sukkahs. The case where everyone agrees that it's not valid is a case where it's a mobile sukkah that's stolen. Even the rabbis agree is invalid. So what's the case where the rabbis argue with Rebbe Eliezer? That was a case where you kicked someone out of their sukkah and you sat down there and decided to dwell there. And that was a case where Rebbe Eliezer says karka is nixeles. First of all, he holds you could steal ground. This was a case where you stole the ground. And number two, he holds that you have to own your own sukkah. So even if it would be borrowed, it would also be a problem. You need to own your own sukkah, and this is called a stolen sukkah. So according to both problems you have, according to Rabbi Eliezer, two reasons why it's invalid. According to the rabbis, it is valid. This is where the rabbis say it's valid, even though you stole a sukkah sort of because you kicked the owner out. But nevertheless, karkas eina nixeles. Ground is not called stolen because you can't steal ground according to the rabbis. And additionally, you don't need to dwell in your sukkah. You could dwell in another sukkah. So being that it's not your sukkah, it doesn't matter. It's okay. It's kosher. And it's not called a stolen sukkah because karkas ain't an nixeles. You can't steal ground. This sukkah is attached to the ground. It's not mobile. Therefore, it's considered a kosher sukkah according to the rabbi. So that's the case of the argument, and that really concludes this Gemara. We sort of started we gave a little start to the next piece, and that was on page 31a, about 20 lines up from the bottom. It talked about yavesh sukkah, a lulav, going back to the laws of lulav. We got a little sidetracked here because we were talking about a stolen lulav, a stolen hadassim, so we got sidetracked about a stolen sukkah. But now we're getting back to the laws of lulav, and we're talking about a lulav that's yavesh, that's dried out. So we're going to start again, 20 lines up from the bottom, page 31a. Tana, it was taught in a Tosefta, yavesh, puzzle, yavesh, dried out, lulav is invalid. Rabbi Yehuda machshir. Rabbi Yehuda says it's kosher. So we saw in the Mishnah that lulav yavesh is puzzle, or dried out lulav is invalid. But here, the Tosefta, we find that Rabbi Yehuda argues, and he says it's kosher. The Gemara says, Amar Rava. Rava says machlokes belulav. The argument is by a lulav, not by an esrog. This argument dried out goes by a lulav. Rabbanan Savri, the rabbis say, makshinon lulav the esrog. We compare lulav to the esrog, and the reason why we compare the two is because they are written together in the pasuk, and the Torah connects them in the same pasuk. It talks about both of them, and that is called a hekesh. The Torah. Hekesh is from the word of clapping together. So they're put together, and therefore we compare them. The Gemara uses the term to mean that you compare them. So we compare lulav to esrog. Ma esrog boy hadar, just like the esrog needs to be beautiful. Af lulav boy hadar, lulav also needs to be beautiful. And therefore, the rabbis hold that a lulav that's dried out is invalid. Rabbi Yehuda savar loy makshin on lulav the esrog, and Rabbi Yehuda holds that we don't compare lulav to esrog. Esrog, it says it has to be beautiful, but lulav not necessarily do we compare it. And avol be esrog they're called other and by lulav not necessarily doesn't need to be beautiful, but esrog everyone agrees they're called other esrog. Everyone agrees that it needs to be needs to be beautiful. And if an esrog was dried out, it would be invalid. So that's that's basically Rava's explanation of the brisa. So Rava's explaining the two views, that they're talking specifically about lulav, not about all the four species. And they're specific. The reason behind it has to do with if you say hekesh. Now Rashi over here tells us that a hekesh is not something that you make up on your own.
Right.
It is something that that you get a tradition from your teachers, and the only thing you could make up on your own is a kal v'chomer. That's a kal v'chomer. If the law is here, this for sure. In another case, that's much more obvious and simpler. That for sure, the law is going to be that way. That would be an a priori argument that you could make up on your own. This is
that's a logical argument. A hekesh or a word, then you have to find who has to say that that's the word that you use.
Correct. So the kal v'chomer is based on logic. It's a logical argument. Now Teves over here argues with Rashi. Interestingly enough, and Teves says that he brings Rashi about the only thing that you can do on your own is a kal v'chomer. He brings Rashi. He says that's very surprising. He says because when you have psukim, two psukim that are next to each other, you're allowed to darshan them. You're allowed to come up with a comparison, even two psukim, two different verses that are put next to each other. And he brings a pasuk smucham lad lo'olam. That in Gemara Yavamas it brings such a concept that you're supposed to compare things. And he says kol shkein hekesha, for sure a hekesh, when the pasuk itself, one pasuk has two words, the two laws next to each other in the same pasuk. So for sure that could be darshan.
Can we explain what we're saying is a hekesh? Have we done this already? I may have missed it because I've been out. But what is it exactly that we are making a hekesh? What's the word or what's the phrase? Okay, and for what purpose?
Good question. The pasuk that we're dealing with is one pasuk, talks about the arba minim, the four species. The pasuk says so it says pre-Eitz Hadar first, which is the fruit. That's a beautiful fruit. That's referring to the esrog. In the same pasuk, it continues. It says kapois tamarim, which is the branch of a date palm. Va'anaf eitz avos. This some type of a branch that is called avos stick, which we refer to a myrtle. It's referring to a myrtle, and ba'ar, which we understand means three. And arvei nachal is that aravos, willows from that normally grow on on the shore. So they are that's the willow, which we use two of them. And the pasuk continues and says, "Usmachtem l'fnei Hashem Elokechem shivas yamim." You should rejoice before Hashem your God for 7 days, which we learned before. That means that in the Beis Hamikdash, they actually would shake the lulav with all the species all 7 days, all four species, all 7 days, each day. But it's only Lefnei Hashem, only when you're in the Beis Hamikdash. Otherwise, biblical obligation is only the Yom Harishon, as the first, the beginning of the verse, the third word and the fourth word says, "V'yom l'kachtem lachem b'yom harishon," should take on the first day. That's referring to outside of the Beis Hamikdash. So the fact that the pasuk starts off with esrog and it says hadar, the question is, do we compare hadar? Do we compare the esrog to the other species that they're all going to be obligated to be hadar, that they all have to be beautiful?
But what is the hekesh?
So the hekesh is that the Torah puts it all together in the same pasuk and it compares the two. So because it compares the two, again, it's not Gzeira Shava. It's not that the same word is mentioned in two verses. That's a different type of limud. This is a hekesh where the pasuk it compares pre-Eitz Hadar to the other species that mentions Hadar there, and it compares the two, compares it to the other species that they all need to be Hadar.
Rabbi, isn't the fact that the word Hadar falls between Priyates and Kapot Marim, and so you could read it Priyates Hadar or Hadar Kapot Marim.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. That's an interesting point. I don't know if that's the simple understanding, but it definitely adds, it makes it more nice. Is that, Jeffrey, is that what you wanted to say? We can't hear you. You're muted. I meant to call on you. I'm sorry, Jeffrey.
Okay, so I learned only recently that many people are translating hekesh to be juxtaposition. It means it's exactly the next word.
Okay.
It's connected to.
Okay, so what I said basically is what I'm.
Exactly, yes. Where do you put the commas? You're making a list. So, but they're going to talk more about this word. It's interesting.
Okay. So the Gemara continues. So again, so Taisvis over here says that a person can really normally make these decisions of how to darsh. In other words, the Rabbanim have the ability, even if they don't have a tradition, as long as it's not Gzeira Shava. Taisa says Gzeira Shava, that's a type of teaching that you need to have a tradition on. But other than that, you normally could.
So did you answer what a hackish is?
I think so.
Oh,
It's basically it's where the pasuk compares the two by putting them. I said hekesh means clapping together. Which
Together.
means the word hekesh. That's what it means to
is it like a
bang.
Gezerah Shava?
But no, not. It means that the pasuk puts the things right next to each other. That's a hekesh. Gzeira
Okay.
Shava is when the same word is found in different places in the Torah, and they have a tradition that is meant to compare the laws. So here it's here is the hekesh.
The juxtaposition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the Taisa says that. So how does Rabbi Yehuda argue if it's clearly it's right next to the law of Esrog? You know, how could you not learn this? This is obvious. It's putting it right next to it in the same pasuk. And Taisa says that here what they're arguing about is the fact that in logic, does it make sense to compare it? Because if in logic it doesn't make sense to use that term here, then we won't use it here, even though it is next to it. Meaning, do you use the term hadar? Beautiful. Taisus gives an example. He says maybe the reason is because hadar, the word beauty, is not normally used for a branch. It's used for a fruit. And he says maybe that's why Rabbi Yehuda isn't comfortable. For whatever reason, Taisus gives this example, but he says for whatever reason it is that Rabbi Yehuda argues in logic, if you should compare lulav to esrog, even though it's juxtaposed, but nevertheless maybe it doesn't belong to learn one from the other. So Taisus says that maybe the reason is because you don't use that term. There are certain things that you just can't compare. You can't connect. So he says. So Taisa says that's a svara that is added to this law of hekesh. Hekesh normally means Torah wants you to compare the two, but there are some things that you don't compare. Maybe certain things that aren't applicable to compare, that don't make sense to compare. So this would be. So he says maybe the reason this doesn't make sense to compare is because the word hadar maybe is only used for a fruit, according to Rabbi Yehuda, and not used for a branch. So that's the understanding of Taisvus. According to Rashi, the argument is, did they have this tradition from their teacher? That's what the argument is. Rabbi Yehuda didn't have such a tradition to compare the two. And the Chachamim have a tradition to compare the two. So that's the argument according to Rashi. The Gemara continues and says, Ubelulav loibai Rabbi Yehuda Kadar. By lulav, does Rabbi Yehuda not need the lulav to be beautiful? But nan, didn't we learn in the Mishnah? Rabbi Yehuda Aimer Yagdenu Momayla. Rabbi Yehuda says that if a lulav, that its branches are somewhat separated, you should tie it above. tie them together. So you see, Rabbi Yehuda seems to time alav mishum the boy hodder. What's the reason? Isn't it because it needs to be beautiful? Isn't that why Rabbi Yehuda, says his halacha? Why it says lie? No, the tani taima. The reason is like the Gemara explains. Will explain later. It explains that Rabbi Yehuda Aimer Mishum Reb Tarfon. Yehuda says the name of Reb Tarfon. Kapais Tamarim. It says a frond of a date palm is kafus. The word kapais is also read like kafus. That it's supposed to be kafus would mean tied up. V'im haya parod, if it was separated, yikfaseno, you should tie it up. So that's the reason why he wants it to be tied up, not because of hadar, but because the word is kafus. The word kapais is also read as could be read as kafus. Gemara says, "V'loy boy hadar." Does Rabbi Yehuda not hold that it needs to be hadar? It needs to be beautiful. The lulav. V'atanan, didn't we learn? Ein oigden as lulav ella b'minoi. You cannot tie the lulav together with the hadassim and aravos, the myrtle, and the willows, only with its min, only with its kind. Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. That's Rabbi Yehuda's view. In other words, you need to use string that's from the min of the lulav, from these types, or from the hadassim and aravos, from you want to use a myrtle branch to wrap it around, or a hadassim to wrap it around, or a lulav tie to wrap it around, but it needs to be b'minoi with something from that group of the lulav group, and otherwise it's he says it's not appropriate. So this is Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Isn't it because of hadar? Maybe it's because it's supposed to be beautiful. My time was Rabbi Yehuda say this law. Lav mishum debai hadar isn't it because you want it to be beautiful, and if you use that string from it somehow matches. I guess it's considered like beautiful, and it would seem that it's that's the reason. So the Gemara says, "Loi, no, that's not the reason." The Amar Rava says, "Afilu besiv," that when when you tie it with its min, with its type, you could even use the fiber that goes around the date palm. That's also kosher. Even the root of the date palm. So these are not beautiful, and nevertheless, it's okay because it's all about the min. Ve'ela my taima de Rabbi Yehuda hasam. So what is the reason over there that he says this about tying it? That you should tie it with its min, not because of hadar, because we see even things that aren't beautiful. Because savar lulav tzarchek, because Rabbi Yehuda holds that a lulav needs to be tied. B'maisi mina achrina, if you do bring other types, havalahu chamisha minim, it will be a prohibition of, you'll have 5 types instead of 4, and that will be a prohibition of Baal Toisif, adding on to the mitzvah. You're not allowed to add, you're not allowed to subtract. If you tie it with a different type of item, that you want to use a rubber band, that could be a problem, because now you're doing 5 types instead of 4 types. So it's going to be Baal Toisif. So the Gemara says, Ube Esrog mi boy Rabbi Yehuda hadar. By Esrog does Rabbi Yehuda say it needs to be beautiful. Tanya, didn't we learn in a brisa, or in a Tosefta? It's actually a Tosefta. Well, Tanya, didn't we learn in a Tosefta that Arbas minim shabalulav, 4 types of the lulav, shem peichsen mehen, same way, you don't use less, like 3 of them, tach ein maisifin aleya, and you also can't add to them, and that's number 1. Number 2 is loy matza esrog. If a person didn't find an esrog, loy yavi, loy parish, v'loy rimain, v'loy davar acher. You can't bring other fruits. How do they translate parish? Is it some plum or something? How do they translate parish?
A quince, Quince.
Okay, thanks. A quince. Can't use a quince, and not a rimain, a pomegranate. So you can't use these items, and not anything else. And then it says another point: kamushin, if they are withered, they're not completely dried out, they're withered. Kisherin, they are kosher. Yavation, they're dried out. Psulin, they are puzzled. And that's, of course, the first opinion. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Rabbi Yehuda says, af yavation, even if they're dried out, they are going to be kosher. V'amar Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda says, Maisa, the story, this is, there's a story. Now we turn the page. V'nei krachin, by people who dwell in a krach. A krach is a big city, and they don't have date palms and vineyards, and over there. It's a big city. It's a urban area. They would inherit their lulav to their grandchildren, which means to their children and to their grandchildren. And in order to fulfill the mitzvah, and it wasn't able for them to get lulavim, so they used a dry one. So this is Rabbi Yehuda's proof that a dry lulav is kosher. And Amru loy, so the rabbis said back to him, Misham Raya, you're going to bring a proof from there? Ein shas adchak Raya. Such a time of great need. That's not a proof that it's kosher. If it's not a time of great need, it's puzzle. This is their even if you used it already, at least according to some, even if you used it already, even with the Evan. So the Gemara says that Katani Miyos. However, we learned Rabbi Yehuda Imer Af Yavation Ksherim. Rabbi Yehuda says even dried out is kosher, and he's not talking about a lulav here. He's talking about all of them. My lava esrog must be that he's also referring to an esrog. They're talking about all the species. If you look, it's arba minem sheba lulav. You can't have less than them. You can't have more. You don't have esrog. Kamushin is ksherim. If they're dried out, they're withered, they're kosher. Yuvation is still, they're dried out, they're not kosher. It sounds like it's going on all of the items. So we see even esrog, Rabbi Yehuda seems to say is kosher. Yuvation is ksherim. So my lava esrog, the Gemara says loy. Not true. Alulav. It's referring to the law of lulav, that on a lulav and the other types, besides for esrog, because by esrog it clearly says hadar, but the lulav and the other item, their species, they would be okay if they're not. They're going to be kosher if they're not hadar. Yavesh is going to be kosher. Now comes the next Gemara. Amar Mar, Master said, Shem peichsin mehen kachin meisifin aleh. The same way you don't use less than the 4 minim. Also, you can't add to the 4 minim. The Gemara says pshita. Okay, you're not allowed to add to the mitzvahs. You're not allowed to subtract. So why would the Brisa spell this out about the laws of the arba minim? Mahu the Tema, the Gemara answers. Mahu the Tema, you might have said, you might have thought to say, Hoyel v'yamar Rebbe Yehuda. Since Rebbe Yehuda says lulav tzarech eged, that a lulav needs to be tied together with the hadassim, the myrtles, and the arabis and the willows. So since Rebbe Yehuda holds that they need to be tied together, the imaisi mina achrina, if you bring another type of species and you don't tie it with them, so you would say that each one is separate. So here you have you're holding the lulav hadassim and aravis, and your esrog, but you're also holding something else. So maybe that would be okay because the lulav is tied with the hadassim and aravis, and this other species that you're holding with them, maybe it's not a problem because it's not part of that tie. You didn't tie it together. So you would think each one is on its own, and so it's not part of the mitzvah. Kamash Malan, the Brisa comes and lets us hear that even according to Rabbi Yehuda, that holds you need to tie them. Nevertheless, you would still transgress. You're not allowed to add. You would transgress Bal Taisif if you added to the this group another item that's not part of those four. That's not the esrog, lulav, hadassim, or arabis. Amar Mar, master said, loy matzah esrog. If you didn't find an esrog, loy yavi, loy riman, you can't use a pomegranate, v'loy parish, not a quince, v'loy davar acher, not something else. The Gemara says, pshita. Obviously, the Torah says esrog. So the Gemara answers, mahu the tema, you might have said, Lysi could bring another item and without a bracha. In order shaloi tishkach teras esrog, so you don't forget about an esrog, so at least add something else. Kamash Malana comes and lets us hear zimnin the nafik churba minei. Sometimes a destruction, which means something wrong, will come out of this. Some stumbling block will come out of this. Some churba literally means a destroyed house. But a nafik churba will come out of it. Some problem will come out of it. The asi, the misrach, it'll end up that even when you can get an esrog, people are going to start using that other item. And the Chachamim said, no, don't bring any other, even if you're just doing it as a zeicher, as a remembrance for the esrog. Don't bring it. Don't bring it. It's rather you should take the lulav hadassim aravais without a bracha. It'll be zay and that's it. And anyway, okay, we're gonna stop here. Zai gesund, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi. Have a great week, folks.